on 95.3 FM in Windhoek, Desert Radio. The bold.
We are going to get into a discussion that has themed our political desk and essentially has themed our show for this morning. On Tuesday, Popular Democratic Movement parliamentarian Alma Dinda said rape does not exist in marriage, as a husband or wife cannot rape their spouse. This prompted SWAPO parliamentarian Patience Masua to call out Dinda, saying that she is using the parliament to sanction rape and is making a mockery of rape victims who have been raped by their husbands and wives. We are now joined in studio by Patience Masua to unpack what actually transpired in Parliament and, of course, just the issue of marital rape. Patience, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, look, like we said off air, there's a lot that's been happening. There's issue, especially a video, circulated all over social media. Many analysts have come out, many politicians have come out, and I guess the Namibian public at large has also come out on their particular opinions on this issue. But we want to hear from you. When you heard the PDM parliamentarian say what she said, what prompted you to raise a point of order?
Well, I think, look, Parliament is... it's the highest point at which we make laws in the country, right? So the type of influence that you have in Parliament, the type of audience that you have, for example, range from, very educated people right into our rural villages, for example, right? So we need to understand and analyze the power that Parliament has. It's a very sensitive space to make provocative statements that could potentially encourage rape, right? And so I had to stand up. It was both a personal and a political conviction to stand up and correct that, because saying that a husband can't rape his wife is both legally wrong. There's no such a law that says that. And it's socially wrong, because you are almost giving husbands or wives, in this case, unfettered power to do with their spouses as they please, almost as objects. And your human dignity doesn't fall away once you get married. A marriage certificate is not a lifelong consent to rape. In fact, marriage is not a defense against rape. And you being married to someone doesn't mean that, you can do with their body as you please. It doesn't exempt you from rape. So that's what it is. I had to stand up. I had to intervene, because it could have left an unquestioned, very dangerous stance.
And as we saw as well, when that happened, there were a lot of members of parliament in the chambers that were coming at you, literally saying things like, shaking their heads and essentially just saying, what is she talking about? We even heard some utterances of, we're not going to talk about marriage to somebody who isn't married. And basically just a lot of undermining of you standing up as a point of order to what had been said. Now, I'm curious, do you think that if you as a young person were not in the chambers in that moment, that somebody would have stood up to basically, make a point of order out of what was being said?
I'm not even sure. Look, we have an incredible Minister of Justice who I know has the awareness and would have intervened. I can't say what would have transpired, had I not been there. But I do know that I had to, because nobody was doing it. Nobody was doing it. There were lots of inflammatory statements being made, and nobody was doing it. I was told all sorts of things, and this is a normal occurrence. I was told I don't read the Bible, I'm not married, why am I talking about sex in Parliament? And I don't think our purpose in Parliament is to necessarily be a part of something to speak about it. I don't need to be married to speak about marriage, because I may or may not get married in future, but that doesn't take away my right to speak on a certain issue. I don't need to conform to, as much as I do read the Bible, I don't need to read the Bible to remind me that somebody's object. In fact, if a Bible tells me that I'm my husband's object, then I'm not going to subscribe to it, period. Right? So I don't like that things like the Bible are being weaponized in Parliament to censor young people. I don't like that me being unmarried is being used by the PDM to try and censor me. I don't think that is fair. I think it's a political tool that's used to censor, to try and keep quiet. And that's not what Parliament is about. We're there to robustly debate on every single issue, regardless of who you are, where you come from. You are allowed to speak on an issue. I don't need to be personally affiliated or a victim myself to speak up on rape. That's not what we're there for.
Yeah, and with that, particularly taking into consideration the reactions you saw in Parliament, and I guess with all the other conversations you've had around sex and around rape in Parliament, do you think parliamentarians are, well educated on bodily autonomy and sexual reproductive rights generally?
Well, I think certainly there's a generational gap, and I think that generational gap has allowed both sides of the argument to be compelling. Whether it's legal or not, both sides of the argument in the public domain have been compelling, and this is why we're a generation that is, of the most liberated ever in the history of mankind, right? And our parents didn't have the autonomy, they didn't have the freedom, they didn't enjoy as much dignity as we have. And that has allowed a system of perpetual violence that has been so normalized and accepted. And it's almost like a cognitive dissonance to see how different generations on the same issue can be on such extreme different ends of the spectrum. I can't, I can't, my personal and political conviction doesn't allow me to succumb to that. And so I do think that there's a lot of education that has been done. Many institutions and organizations that really try and capacitate, all of us in all spheres of life on bodily autonomy. We have a parliamentary committee that particularly Committee on Gender that deals with sensitive issues such as these. We have professionals. Many of our MPs are social workers by nature, many of our MPs. And you'll see that the House was divided. I mean, the cameras on me, I'm largely surrounded by PDM MPs because of how the seats are allocated. So it seems that there was, gross disruption, which is correct. But if you look at the other side of the House, I think everybody was just, watching it play out. They were just watching it play out to see, how this will go. And there was a lot of support, actually, just despite, the camera angle. It's always about the angle. It's always about where the camera is, because you'll miss certain things. Yesterday, a MP, swore in Parliament and nobody saw it. So it's... Yeah, there's certainly still an incredibly long way to go. I'm shocked. I'm really, really, really appalled. But I do think that it's certainly a generational gap. There's a gap in exposure. It seems some of our MPs actually don't know the laws because marital rape is criminalized for 20 years now. And you see... This was not even supposed to be a discussion. Marital rape is already criminalized, right? What the Act seeks to do, the Combating of Rape Amendment Bill, seeks to remove from the Combating of Immoral Practices Act the defense of marriage in terms of sexual offenses to a minor. That is so incredibly sensitive. Because currently in the Immoral Practices Act, marriage is a defense for sexual offenses with a minor. Obviously, it's overridden by other acts that prohibit sexual offenses with a minor in isolation. But she used that provision to justify marital rape. And for me, I mean, we were, intimately part of the process of seeing how these laws are changed and developed. I mean, I can send you each and every section that is being amended, and you'll see how problematic some of these sections actually are. And this act just wants to remove that defense from sexual offenses with minors in the instance that a minor has been married off, for whatever reason. And it was quite unfortunate that this had to be used in this context, I've been told all sort of things. I mean, in the public domain, there's a lot of good reactions because this is a genuinely good issue. But there's a lot of, really disgusting reactions. I've been told, stop talking about sex. Is that all you can talk about? I mean, we've been talking about unemployment, youth unemployment particularly. We've been talking about so many different issues. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking about how interns are being exploited. How are we still allowing free internships? Even, by some really big institutions. I was shocked to see some unpaid internships of late. Candidate attorneys being exploited so much, where you need to do the work of a lawyer, but you get paid like 2,000 Namibian dollars a month, for example. Really critical things that we spoke about. And I've been in the chambers for a year now. And people have the audacity to say, all you can talk about is sex when we're talking about rape, So... yeah, it's intense.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then, speaking on this generational gap in this particular discourse, right? We're not only seeing it at the level now of just the general population, general society, but I think it becomes dangerous when it's in those chambers. So what efforts can actually be made to fill that gap? Because it's clear that, with the various generations, there are some understandings of certain things that are missing. So how does that bridge start to be, built so that they can meet the conversation where it's at now?
Yeah, you would think that members of parliament ought to know better and have a higher sense of appreciation for our laws. But not only for our laws, but for general justice. Something doesn't have to be criminalized for it to be wrong. And this is why we have laws, because human beings just can't control themselves, essentially, right? And it's unfortunate that there's a lot of education that needs to go into sensitizing our lawmakers in terms of how you approach certain issues. Some issues you can really be hard and raw on, and others just not. You just can't. So definitely a lot of education, awareness, sensitization. I mean, how are you laughing? I had to keep myself together up there. It was just, I can't even explain it to you because you're trying to get a point across. Yet you're almost crying because people are laughing in your face and telling you, shut up, sit down, don't you read your Bible? They tell you, all sorts of nasty things that are not always captured. The mics don't always get it because only whoever's close to me, their mics, my mic is on, so it could sort of capture that. And after you sit down, when, ladies, women tell you, yeah, sis, man, these young people, this is just disgusting. Didn't your mother raise you better? Things like that. So, you have to keep it together for the greater good because you have to get that point across.
Yeah.
Because you can't leave it hanging. You can't fold. You have to literally stand there, keep it together, and so it's really tough.
And
but you have to do it. Someone has to do it.
I'm particularly interested in that, Patience, because over the years we've seen, especially with the introduction of young parliamentarians within Parliament, that they get told things like "shut up" or "you don't know what you're talking about," and just comments that aren't "quote unquote" parliamentary, right? As young people, I'll ask you this in twofold: how should you react to that? But also, what is being done to find a solution to that sort of attitude to young people and what they have to say and their contributions that they have to make within Parliament?
I think, look, Parliament it's lion eats lion. It's rough, and we've seen it with parliaments all across the world. But with ours, there's a particular sense of entitlement in terms of entitlement and control, really, in terms of how you should respond to somebody who's older than you. And I think, look, we're a principled society. So those invisible lines of hierarchy, you see them. But when they become exploited, it's problematic. Yesterday, the same MP tells another young MP, the Deputy Minister of ICT, she tells her, I will take you and I will hit you. I don't know what the exact words are, but she's like, ek gaan vir jou vat en ek gaan vir jou. You know, that, you're making literally somebody who's a deputy minister, you're making them seem like they're an infant. And that's problematic. Sometimes, an MP here and there would stand up and defend, and say, look, this is not how you speak to somebody who could be the age of your mother. But it goes both sides. You don't get to disrespect me, I don't get to disrespect you, because both ends are equally harmful. But certainly there's so much more work to be done, because sometimes, you want to say things to somebody, but then you realize, actually, they're my mother's age, and I wouldn't be proud of saying this to somebody else. But then you realize, but actually, we are in a neutral space. In these chambers, we're all colleagues, So it's a delicate balance of being firm and respectful at the same time. The balance is necessary if you want to achieve anything.
And then just in closing, before we let you go, Patience, what do you think is the implication of statements like this being made on this platform, especially in a country that is so ruled by traditional mindsets and ways of thinking, especially when it comes to things like reporting marital rape? What is the impact of these kinds of statements, the statements that were made by Honorable Dienda?
I think the most direct and unfortunate impact is that you're silencing lots of women. So I have, I'm very active on my Instagram, and I sort of had a poll on whether or not rape can take place within the confines of marriage. And the number of women that actually came out and said, I'm actually going through this right now. Professionals. Like, there was a lawyer married to a doctor. She's being raped by her husband. And so the most dangerous and harmful and unfortunate consequence is that in an environment where already women are not speaking up, our stats only tell you of the ones that speak up. Our stats don't tell you of the people who don't speak up. So already you are silencing thousands, hundreds and thousands of more women. And that is totally counterproductive to anything that we seek to achieve in that house. The second thing that it does is that it gives men and entrenches this further sense of entitlement over somebody else. And that is just, that's I don't even have the word to describe it. It's unfortunate, and this wasn't supposed to happen.
Well, Patience, thank you so much for coming in today to talk to us a little bit about what took place on Tuesday. And I'm sure that this dialogue is going to keep going.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, social media has been quite something.
It's on fire.
It's on fire.
Yeah,
and
it's
some
on
of
fire.
the comments I'm seeing, it's definitely a dialogue that will be ongoing for a while. So we'll be keeping eyes on that, and I'm sure that you'll be out there as well. But thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.